Moving on to week 2, the second football game of the season for Mike Elko and his team is tomorrow. We'll get you set for all of it with our good pal, Conor O'Neill, as he stops by. It's a new episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Hope that you're having a great Friday, September 8th, 2023. We have arrived at the second week of the college football season. Week 1 of NFL coming up this weekend, and excited to talk about all the things going on in the life of Duke Athletics as they get set for their game tomorrow inside Wallace Wade Stadium. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to our podcast for free wherever you get your podcasts. Also watch the show daily on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, share it with your friends. Let's keep climbing. We really do appreciate your support here of our program. If you haven't done so already, I'm on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. The show is there as well at LO_Blue Devils. Let's bring on my good pal, Conor O'Neill from our good friends over at Rivals. They're with Devils Illustrated. So good to have you here on the program with us as always, Conor. And here we are. We're talking about a 1-0 Duke football team. Not many people thought that Duke was going to be able to get the win that they did on Monday.
Yeah. Did you say it's week 2? Because I feel like I'm still putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
I feel like I lived 2 parallel lives from week 1. It was a game that I think Duke closed at like a 12 or 13 point underdog. I will beat my own horn a little bit here. I did have three optimistic takes going into Duke's season where I said Duke would go 4-1 in September. I do think I did go into it thinking a couple of different things. One of them was basically if you're going to play Clemson, you want to play them early. You don't want to play them in November when their depth really has a chance to show up. I've seen that script play out with Wake a few times to know that you're better off if you get them early in the season when you're theoretically at your healthiest. And number 2, it's better to get a new quarterback offensive coordinator combo in week 1 than say week 6 or week 10. Like things are always going to be bumpy there in the beginning for Garrett Riley and Kate Klubnik. And Duke certainly was prepared for what they were going to do. And that showed. And that's a credit to Tyler Santucci, the new coordinator who did shine in that matchup of new coordinators against each other coming from Texas schools. But it was a huge game, a huge night for Duke.
Big win. I mean, for the first time since 1989, as we've been saying all week, they've got a win over a top 10 opponent. We obviously talk about Duke football way more frequently than the national perspective or heck, even the ACC conversations that are had with this team. Is it easy to kind of overstate the significance of this win, or where exactly does that lie with what a win like this can do for Duke football and how they're perceived?
I think there's some of that is to be written, right? And some of it doesn't have anything to do with Duke. If I don't think the bottom is going to fall up for Clemson, I think they're still going to be a 9 or 10 win team at the end of the year. But if they go 6-6 or 7-5, the harsh reality of it is Duke's win is going to diminish in value. It's probably not the way it should be. Like everybody thought Clemson was this level. They still have the recruiting talent and the firepower that they do with whatever it is, 39 4/5 stars, whatever that number creeps up into. But it's just kind of the way things go. And Mike Elko talked a lot on Monday night. He talked a lot at his Thursday press conference, which is usually a Monday press conference, which gives you an idea of how loopy this 2-week stretch gets.
Sure.
He talked about changing the perception, and he did say, like, part part of the battle since he's come to Duke is changing the way people think about Duke football. And Monday night goes a long way toward doing that. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't just change overnight. Perception does not. Perception is such a hard thing to push your way into new territory of, and that's the goal. That's what this staff wants to do, and that's what everything they do is geared toward. But you gotta have more than one win. You got to back it up with strong performances, especially for the next 3 weeks, with 3 games that Duke should be a double-digit favorite in. And then we get to see them play another, whether Notre Dame is top 10 or top 15 at that point, who knows? But they'll get another national game this month. Like that's where, if you want to start looking ahead, we're not on the team. It doesn't matter if we look ahead. That's where my focus kind of is not on, but it's kind of there in the periphery right now.
That's why I love that you and I get the opportunity to do that, Conor, right? Because the coaches do get kind of so locked into what the season is, and yeah, it's just one win and it's on to week 2 and all those cliches that you can throw out there. But at the end of the day, this is a Duke podcast that primarily focuses on men's basketball, like a lot of people do when it comes to kind of following success and the trends and teams. And here we are each and every week getting excited about the team. We certainly were there at parts through the David Cutcliffe era, and last year was a great success in year 1 of the Mike Elko era. But I'm just curious how long this, is this sustainable? Because 1989, I wasn't even in the world when that happened, that Duke football knocked off a top 10 team. This is uncharted waters that we're navigating right now.
Yeah, I appreciate the 1989 aspect because that's my birth year.
Okay.
So when Spurrier knocked off, what was the 1989 top 10 win? It was Clemson.
Clemson,
it was the same team. Yeah. I think I was like 4 months old. And my other favorite part of the 1989 thing is it's the second opener in a row that you're left saying something since 1989 with a Duke football game, because last year when they shut out Temple 30-0 to open Mike Elko's tenure, it was their first shutout of an FBS opponent since 1989. And that was the 41-0. Steve Spurrier got everybody to take a picture in front of the scoreboard in Chapel Hill. But it's fun times, right? It's a program on the rise. I can't stress that enough. And I think that's what Mike and his staff have been doing in the last couple of days. When you're on the rise, you haven't arrived. You never really want your program to feel like you've arrived. Even Clemson, for the last 8 years, when they've had a stranglehold of the ACC and won 2 national championships, they didn't want their players to feel like they'd arrived. That's why Dabo was out there saying, singing the little old Clemson and nobody respects us bit when they're the defending champs. That's why Georgia last year said nobody believed in us. You just won the national championship. What do you mean? So there's some refocusing there, and they want to make sure that it stays, that everybody always wants that arrow to keep pointing up. You never want to flatline. You never want to plateau. And that's where the focus has been for this team and program over the last few days.
Let's talk about this defense for Duke. Again, we mentioned Tyler Santucci, the debut that he had, just 7 points scored by Clemson. We'll talk a little bit more about that defense and get you set for the second week of the action after our first time out here on Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today, brought to you by our friends over at Nutrafol, the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement, clinically shown to improve your hair growth, visible thickness, and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are physician-formulated, natural, science-backed ingredients. Their drug-free, patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sexual health. Take the first step to visibly thicker and healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter promo code LOCKEDONCollege. In a clinical study, 84% of men showed improvements in their hair after 6 months taking Nutrafol. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Once again, Nutrafol.com/men, spelled Nutrafol.com/men, and enter promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Nutrafol.com/men, promo code LOCKEDONCollege. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside my pal Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated. All right, let's talk about this defense. Once again, we mentioned 1989 a second ago, and I'm glad you brought up the Temple game from last season, because I've said this every day this week. So at this point, my listeners are tired of me belaboring this point over and over and over again. But it had to be discussed at this point last year. Like, look, opponents are going to score against Duke. This shutout trend in the Mike Elko era is not going to continue. And in some strange way, we're having sort of a similar conversation about that defensive performance against Clemson, because, Conor, the defense is going to give up more than 7 points in a game this season.
Yeah, you're not going to have too many other games where the opponent gets inside your 5-yard line 4 times and comes away with 7 points total. Anthony Nelson did a great job on the second fumble to kind of stick his head in there, but that's even kind of his head was in the right place at the right time to jar the ball away from Phil Maffa. Cade Klubnik keeping it in the running back, I think it was Shipley, in his belly a little too long, resulted in the first muffed fumble, and then the blocked field goal. You're not going to have – you can't count on 2 blocked field goals every game. I'm not breaking any news. I'm not, giving away football secrets with that. But there is something to be said for what Mike talked about after the game in regard to since day one. He's told us that the people, above him or the people around the school wanted to know if the team would compete for 4 quarters, if they would play hard, if they would not quit, because, to be brutally honest, that last team under David Cutcliffe did quit in a lot of games. That was a team that was overmatched. I think back to that. It was either a Thursday or Friday night game against Louisville where Malik Cunningham threw for 400 yards and ran for 200 yards and had one long run where it just looked like Duke defenders were pulling up when he was
getting flashbacks right now.
Yeah. That was a team that they did give up in a few times. So to move it forward, Mike, when he took the job, he's asked those questions. He's like, yes, absolutely, guaranteed. We will not give up. And every coach says it. It's one thing to say it. It's another thing to kind of drill it into your players. And we've seen that for 14 games. Like, everybody wants to we still talk about Mike as he's a new coach and it's a new program. And it's kind of like, yes, he's only coached 14 games. Yes, he's 1 game into year 2, but everything he's said that they wanted to be and they've wanted to do, he's done. Like, they've filled the gaps in the transfer portal on defense, right? They got Anthony Nelson in the portal last year. He's helped the defensive line. They've got Cam Dillon starts at linebacker. He came in last year. They knew they had to get bigger in the secondary. That's why they've got a 6'4" corner on one side with Miles Jones coming from Texas A&M and a 6'1" corner on the other side, Al Blades Jr. coming from Miami. Getting Jeremiah Lewis back, the re-edition of Jeremiah Lewis results in 11 tackles and a fumble recovery and DB of the week in the ACC. And we learned on Thursday that he broke his thumb and got a cast on it at halftime. So the fumble recovery happens while he's got a cast on his thumb. I don't know if they picked that up on TV or anybody in the stadium could have seen that. I didn't see it from where we were.
No, I didn't.
But yeah, it just speaks to, like I was saying, everything about Mike. The tenure is still young. 14 games is not an era by any stretch, but going 10-4 in those 10 games and doing the thing, playing the way they do, is sustainable, and it's everything he said they wanted the program to be about.
Really excited to see how this defensive unit can continue to improve throughout the rest of the season, because yes, it's just 7 points. But as we've talked about a good bit in that Clemson game, there were more opportunities for Clemson to score in that game. And so certainly could have had areas, 29 first downs for Clemson, right? Like 7 of 15 on third down. Certainly ways in which that defense can perform going into the rest of the season, Connor.
Yeah, and that was we got jokes about it after the game from Mike and from Dwayne Carter. They were basically like, yeah, I mean, bend don't break. We don't really want to bend, but if we do bend, we don't want to break. Mike made a joke when I asked about Tyler Santucci. Is like, yeah, he was really good inside the 10s and he was really bad between the 20s. That's his sense of humor, to kind of joke like that. It's kind of that sharp. But it's a deep, like, I have doubts that anybody in college football other than like 2 or 3 teams can win games with defense only.
Right.
Like Duke is going to need good games from Riley Leonard to beat just about everybody on their schedule. But having a good defense can really let you play some complementary football. Having a good defense means you don't have to bank on getting to 30 points. Duke didn't get to Clemson.
With that being said, getting set for the next game here for Duke football as they move forward with the schedule. Celebrating Clemson is an awesome thing to do, but there's more football left to be played, and we'll do that after our next time out here on the program today. Locked On Blue Devils brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. If you're thinking about tickets to go anywhere, you got to consider Gametime because they're absolutely amazing. Gametime is the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. The Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first order. That is, once again, promo code LOCKEDONCollege when you create an account at Gametime. Terms apply for a first-time offer, $20 off on your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Final few moments here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated. Tell me a little bit about your website, man. Busy time of year with football starting. The season has arrived. We've made it through Labor Day weekend. What can we find on the site?
Yeah, duke.rivals.com is where you need to go to get some football updates, football stories. We'll have basketball, but right now it's kind of football centric. That's the time of year. It's September. Got some primers on Lafayette for you. Got some additional notes coming out of the game. A story on Riley Leonard and how he's been able to step up when Duke needs him most over the last 2 seasons. So really good stuff over there. Go over and check it out for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Again, duke.rivals.com.
Go check it out. I absolutely endorse everything that Conor does. That's for sure. So tell me this then. What do we need to know about the game tomorrow? Week 2, we don't know as much about an opponent. This isn't Clemson coming to Wallace Wade Stadium. What do we need to know?
Yeah, you need to know, I mean, beyond the typical, it's the FCS game. It's a game that Duke should cruise pretty easily. Like, they made quick work of A&T last year in the FCS game. There's one running back to keep your eye on. Jamar Curtis, he ran for 181 yards in Lafayette's season opening win.
Wow.
Lafayette's coming off of an emotional win. I don't know if it's quite as emotional as knocking off Clemson, but they had a 19-14 win where they got up 13-0, gave up a lead and trailed 14-13 in the fourth quarter. They switched out quarterbacks. Their quarter, I don't know if he got hurt or if it was performance. It's kind of tough to tell just looking at the box score, but the quarterback they went to threw for 29 yards and had a 21-yard scramble to the 1-yard line to set up the game-winning touchdown with 7.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So it's look, it's the FCS game. I'm not going to oversell it as this clash of titans. This is a game that Duke hopefully gets a long look at guys like Henry Beelan, who's kind of the future of the quarterback position after Riley Leonard leaves, and Peyton Jones is a running back who should get some carries in this game. You start to talk about the young receivers, and it's not just about offensive skill. It's working some guys in the defensive rotation in as well. But it's not just a write-off like, okay, I'll check the box score in the morning or check the box score at 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. before I go to bed type of game. Like I would watch this game to see kind of what next year's Duke team might look like. Like look at where some guys are going to be leaving, like Dwayne Carter and Jamion Franklin. Enjoy them while you can, but they're not going to be here next year. So look at the defensive tackles who are going to be coming in for them and see who's able to do what.
On the offensive side of the ball, you mentioned a lot of the younger guys getting a chance to step up, and that offense for Duke, we saw them make some big plays in the Clemson game, but particularly in the passing game, the biggest plays were made in kind of throwovers to the running backs with a 28-yarder and a 25-yard gain. And so the wide receivers in particular, and then Riley Leonard's ability to kind of set them up for big-time plays. Talk a little bit about that, if you will, Conor.
Yeah, Duke wants to use running backs in the passing game. I mean, that was Kevin Johns was really good about that at Memphis.
Yeah.
Something that it didn't show up as much last year. At least I don't think. I don't remember it showing up as much last year. I think that's more a product of where Duke wanted to go with the ball rather than anybody's skill in the backfield. Jordan Waters, I mean, we've known Jordan Waters can catch passes out of the backfield for 2 seasons, right? When he was the backup to Mateo Durant in 21, he was a really good receiver out of the in third down and long and stuff like that.
Touchdown in the Charlotte game to start the season on a pass. So
right. So it's, I don't think it's going to be, 50% of Riley's yards are going to come from the running backs. I don't, but I do think that's a weapon. Duke has shown it's a weapon. I would kind of count on Jalen Calhoun having a big game, just the byproduct of not having a good game against Clemson, muffing the punt. I think he had one of the false starts too. That's the type of player that I don't know that he has 2 bad games in a row in him. So I would look for him to get involved, and it should be a pretty good day for the offense.
And the last thing here, as we talk about tomorrow's game, again for Duke, not the magnitude of Clemson coming to town. It's not the primetime ESPN slot on Labor Day when folks are going to be watching this. But Conor, you're someone who has spent a number of hours inside that Wallace Wade Stadium press box. You've seen so many games in that venue itself. The atmosphere you saw on Monday night and what that could possibly mean in the trajectory of the season, like fans really getting bought in. What are you thinking? That
times the fact that you have a visitor list of high school recruits that was more than 100. That's the biggest thing. And you had some big names on that list. The number one that I would go to is Bryce Davis, the really high 4-star defensive end out of Greensboro, who's a class of 2025 kid. Those are the type of guys that you need to impress on more than just you can beat Clemson and you can play with the biggest dogs of college football. You need to kind of put on a show for them and make sure the atmosphere lives up to, big time college football. Wallace Wade is not going to be the biggest stadium in college football. Its capacity is 40,000 people. I don't think there's any kind of renovation possible that would make it like 80,000, like Death Valley, the one down in South Carolina, or like any of those SEC cathedrals. But how you can kind of combat that is you can create the atmosphere. You have a horseshoe. I love the horseshoe setup. I think it's a great environment, and it kind of traps the noise in there. And that's what I look at as far as make it a party, make it seem like everybody in the stands is having fun and enjoying themselves. I'm not the biggest fan of the light shows, but I know that's not for me. Like that's for other people. and they other people seem to like those.
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's all about the atmosphere, and they put on a good show against Clemson. That's what I think would be the ceiling, and now it's a little bit of the floor here. It's a little bit of, let's see who we can get out for the FCS game and how much of a fun atmosphere can it still be.
I will be watching this Saturday to see what that atmosphere looks like following up that big-time Clemson game. And Conor, of course, will be reading and following your work all along the way as well. Thank you again for taking some time to stop by, my friend. It's always good to see you.
Thanks, JJ. I appreciate it.
That's Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated joining us here on today's show. Go make sure you check out his work. That's going to do it for our show today. That'll do it for this week on Locked On Blue Devils. Make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you on Monday. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.